I'm Victor Dzau, the president of the U.S. National Academy of Medicine, and I'm so pleased to see all of you here for this international workshop. Saying that welcome, and this global public workshop is part of the National Academy of Medicine's initiative for advancing pandemic and seasonal influenza vaccine preparedness and response. I'd like to begin to thank the Office of Global Affairs at the Health and Human Services for their sponsorship of this critically important work. Specifically, Larry Kerr, who's director of the Office of Pandemic and Emerging Threats, and his team, Colin Weinberger and Seth Furry. Back in July 2020, Larry contacted me to discuss the need for such a study that would access lessons learned from COVID-19 and to apply to pandemic and seasonal flu. Given the global nature of this issue, we agree that the work of the International Committee should be international and complementary to the effort of WHO. With this as background, we assembled a truly international committee with a range of expertise covering global public health, infectious disease prevention, influenza vaccine research, development and manufacturing, pandemic preparedness response, virology and immunology, and others. So the committee includes experts, particularly who are actively involved with the work of WHO, including the co-chair Martin Fried, who's the coordinator of the Initiative for Vaccine Research at WHO. This international committee consists of domestic and international experts from across all sectors: academia, government, industry, civil society, public health organization, was charged to lead an expert-informed process for assessing the global impact that technologies, processes, policies developed for COVID-19 could have on influenza, global preparedness and response, especially vaccine development. At the very start of the initiative 6 months ago, the committee reviewed the current state of science and knowledge gaps related to capabilities, technologies, and policies developed for COVID-19, and used this information to develop a scope and focus for four academy studies that will make recommendations to improve global design, composition, clinical trials, production, scale-up, regulatory approval, distribution, and post-approval surveillance of vaccines. So you can see this is a very big scope. And you can see in the next slide that these four consensus studies, which are ongoing, and their reports were released in the fall of 2021. So you can see from this slide, vaccine development and research. Next slide, please. There you go. Vaccine research development recommendations for advanced pandemic and seasonal influenza response. And the next one would be addressing issues of vaccine development and supply chain to advance pandemic and seasonal influenza preparedness response. Third study is public health interventions and countermeasures. And the fourth one, global coordination, partnership, and financing recommendations. So you can see these are four studies that are ongoing. And once the studies are near final, which we expect in a few months, the International Committee will review the recommendation and distill key principles and an overarching synthesis or summary. But this hasn't, of course, been developed yet. In the fall of 2021, following the release of the four studies, the International Committee will conduct a stakeholder outreach and media outreach, convene an international event to facilitate coordination, collaboration among domestic and international stakeholders, discuss the final report recommendation, and propose a pathway forward for the implementation of these recommendations. It will also disseminate and monitor progress on the recommendations and advise the national academies on discussions regarding future activities and ad hoc studies on pandemic and influenza preparedness and response. Next slide, please. So the purpose of this workshop, 3-day workshop, is to bring together many great minds across the world to highlight success and challenges learned from the past year. And as I said, the information discussion of this workshop will be used to inform the National Academy studies that is ongoing and released in the fall 2021. So the workshop will take place over 3 days, today, 21st, and then May 25th. And each day will focus on a particular topic identified by the planning committee with input from consensus committees. Day 1, as you can see, is global coordination. Day 2, supply chain cascade. And day 3, lessons learned across the fields. You know, we chose these topics because they are big, cross-cutting issues with applicable knowledge for future challenges to advance the understanding of equitable access to a global crisis. Okay, so next slide. So this slide will show you the invited presentation. I won't have time to go over all of them. Suffice to say, they look at late-breaking developments and vaccine R&D that can inform pandemic influenza planning, explore global coordination framework and opportunities, discuss lessons learned from COVID-19 vaccine rollout, and countermeasures, including critical shortages of materials, explore gaps in One Health, governance and surveillance and risk assessment, highlight equity challenges, explore innovations in surveillance, data gathering, and of course, discuss the best practices for communicating emerging research and building public confidence, vaccine and public health measures. So the meeting is intended to generate new ideas, share lessons learned, and create honest discussion among a very complex series of problems. The discussion on 3 days, as I said, will be summarized in the formal proceedings to be released later this year. The final slide, please. So I'd like to thank the members of the workshop planning committee that is different, but overlaps with the international committee for the hard work. And you can see the list here, chaired by Heidi Larson. I want to thank all the other members that I won't have time to read all the names for creating such a great program. So thank you again for all of you for joining and dedicating your time to this important work. And thank you very much, and really have a great 3 days. So it's my great pleasure now to introduce Cheryl Yukate, moderator for the first panel on global roles and mechanism during a health emergency. Cheryl is the Director of Health Emergency for Pan American Health Organization of the WHO and the WHO. He serves as a Deputy Director General at the National Institute of Occupational Health in Peru, Director General of the Office of National Defense of the Ministry of Health of Peru, and the President of the Peruvian Society of Emergency Medicine. He's also official representation of Peruvian government to the International Committee of the Red Cross, consulting to the Office of U.S. Foreign Disaster Assistance, and a member of the United Nations Disaster Assessment Coordination Team. Cyril, you're very busy. You coordinate the United Nations Interagency Disaster Team in Honduras and serve subsequently as PAHO WHO Emergency Preparedness and Disaster Relief Advisor for South America. Welcome, Cheryl. Over to you.